Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good weekend. The Browns, a little bit of a longer weekend. They'll be off tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday, getting ready for game week. Coming up Monday, they'll start preparations for the Bengals week from Sunday over at Cleveland Browns Stadium. Along those lines, today the Browns got a workout in at Cleveland Browns Stadium. Dustin Hopkins searching for the spirit of Phil Dawson in his new home, kicking down there for the first time, getting a lay of the land. Alex Leatherwood, big offensive tackle that they picked up via waivers on the practice squad. Linebackers getting in some drills as well. Deshaun Watson finding one of his new wide receivers, Elijah Moore. Kevin Stefanski talked about Deshaun Watson being elected one of 5 captains by his teammates after the practice.
From every position there, so you don't need that C to determine that you're a leader. Now, having said that, these players voted for those guys, and Deshaun in particular, because you asked the question, but Deshaun, that's very, very natural for him to lead. And I think he's comfortable leading from out in front. I think he's comfortable from leading and letting his teammates get credit. And that's just something that he's always done his whole life. And just the way he's integrated himself into this football team is impressive to watch from the course of the moment he got here to now. Just seeing how he's gotten to know everybody on his team, how he pushes them, how he motivates them. I think you're seeing a lot of examples of high-quality leadership from Deshaun in particular.
Kevin Stefanski talking about Deshaun Watson being elected as one of 5 captains. The others were Joe Bitonio, Myles Garrett, Anthony Walker, and Charlie Hewlett, the long snapper on special teams. With that, let's welcome in Jared Mueller, Dawgs by Nature. Jared, so Hopkins out at Cleveland Browns Stadium admitted as much yesterday that it's a tough place to kick, but Watkins has assumed the leadership role you hoped he would.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm just really excited the Browns decided to have their kicker at the stadium, right? At some level, outside of some specific training, I feel like the punters and the kickers should always be at Browns Stadium kicking, especially when it's home game weeks. Watson, from a leadership perspective, everything we can see, both, I've been on the ground there in Berea, but also, videos and just what we're hearing, totally different player and person than we saw last year. Definitely more comfortable in his skin, more comfortable with it being his team. And his teammates elected him to be a captain. And so it's just a good sign. When you're paying that kind of money, it's nice when you get all the rest of the stuff. In the end, he has to be a really good quarterback. He can be a great leader. Doesn't really matter if he's not a great quarterback, because that contract is about being a great quarterback. And then obviously the other 4, Charlie Hewlett has been a captain for a long time now. Myles is really the straw that stirs the drink, and so on and so on. So it's a really unique group. Anthony Walker, kind of that verbal leader in the middle of the defense, along with Joe Bitonio, who's been around basically the longest outside of Charlie Hewlett. So it's just an interesting group, but it's going to all come down to Watson's leadership and his play.
You know what? The other thing, his teammates genuinely, from what you can tell, seem to like him a lot.
Yeah, and it's real. He's a guy that people seem to enjoy to be around. He's loose, he's relaxed, but he wants to work hard, and he wants people to work hard with him. But his style is not, yelling in your face or anything like that. It's really let me teach, let me share, let me show. And so, yeah, teammates really like him. And I think that's really important in the NFL when you think about kind of that day-to-day grind and traveling together and, going through rehab together and eating together and all of that. It's important that, the quarterback is someone you want to be around and you believe in, you trust, all of those kind of things.
All right, the Browns did in fact re-sign Maurice Hurst earlier today. They placed Jordan Kanasic short-term IR. That was to be expected. Also restructured another contract. Jedrick Wills converting $2.286 million of base salary into a signing bonus. 3 void years added. It creates $1.8 million in cap space. That according to Field Yates. Again, that cap space, they're not getting ready to sign anybody. They're doing it to roll it over so they're not in cap prison the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, and it's really a lot of it's an economic, it's an accounting tool that just makes a lot of sense to be able to roll it over. At this point, they've basically taken care of any of that kind of debt that they currently are set to have for next year. But they also prepare themselves if something comes available, right? Obviously, we're going to use the big name Aaron Donald. If Aaron Donald becomes available for some kind of fourth round pick, maybe they decide to spend that money and figure the rest out. Or if there's an injury and they want to spend $4 or $5 million in a trade to acquire someone to fill a role, they want to make sure they have that rollover cap, but they also want to make sure that they have the availability to fill a hole if needed. And so that's going to be a really important thing. One of the things about Andrew Berry that we have seen over the years, even with the Hurst, him coming back and obviously short-term IR, Andrew Berry is always active. He's always making decisions. He's always making moves. He's always bringing players in. You can never say that he is not working because we have a lot of articles to write because he is consistently looking at the roster, making adjustments to the roster. It never stays the same.
And the Hurst move is not a surprise at all. You kind of knew they were going to do. Hurst played pretty well. It had nothing to do with that. His standing in the league allowed them to cut him. He didn't have to go to waivers, and he came back.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it a few years ago with Greg Robinson. He was their starting left tackle. They cut him for a day. The thing that's actually a surprise is many of us expected that would happen with two players. We thought Michael Dunn, Maurice Hurst would, come back, and Alex Wright would join the IR. It's really interesting that Alex Wright is back practicing. So someone we thought was going to miss a few games and likely go to IR is back practicing, which puts Michael Dunn on the practice squad. So it's just a really interesting. We kind of knew the Hurst thing, but we kind of assumed Michael Dunn would be coming back to the 53-man roster and Alex Wright would be going to IR as well today. And that didn't happen, and Wright actually ended up back on the field.
An interesting dynamic. So Browns cut a number of draft picks, and you go Anthony Schwartz, third-rounder, Tommy Togiai, third-rounder, Cade York, fourth-rounder, Perrion Winfrey, fourth-rounder, Demetric Felton, sixth-rounder, Isaiah Thomas, and Dawson Deaton, seventh-rounders. That's something that hadn't happened. Is it an indication that that you're at a point with this roster now where you expect to win?
It is, and it's an indication of that. It's an indication of a new defensive coordinator, right? So yep. Joe Woods has been around for 3 years. He likes certain things. Very few people covering the team or watching the team liked much of what they saw from Joe Woods' defenses. So now Jim Schwartz is in. He wants things a little bit differently. But when you look at that list, the Browns of last year and 3 years ago are keeping Anthony Schwartz around. They're keeping Tommy Togiai. They're keeping Cade York. They might even keep a Perrion Winfrey because they're not really playing for anything, or maybe they're playing for something, but they're really, hoping for building a roster for a Super Bowl in a year or 2 or 3 years away. Now it's about winning now, and so they can't have Cade York missing kicks. And even kind of the main people on that list, of all of them, Dawson Deaton is on IR. Isaiah Thomas is now back on the practice squad, but the rest of them haven't been signed to the Browns practice squad or on a different team, right? So they have moved on and they are looking to compete now. They do not have time for those huge mistakes, and they don't really have time to develop players very much. You have some of those back-end guys. We'll talk about a couple of them here in a little bit, but you're not sticking on the roster just because you're a third-round pick. You're not sticking on the roster just because you're a fourth-round pick. The Browns are in a completely different place than they were just last year.
Well, yeah, and one of the guys you talked about, Ronnie Hickman, he was asked, rookie undrafted free agent, makes the 53-man roster. He was asked, can he relax a little bit now?
Nah, man, the rents due every day for real. So it's a small side, but like the rents due every day around here. And in this profession, you gotta earn it every day. This game is about opportunity. You never know when your number's called, but when your number's called, you got to make the play, and that's kind of a thing we used to say at Ohio State. So, when your number's called, you want to go out there and make the play, and not only for yourself, but for your teammates as well.
And perfect attitude. Whoever was in his ear and he said it was Rodney McLeod, tell him the right thing.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, and this is just kind of an inside thing, the Browns decide who gets interviewed, right? The media really has no choice. They can request it, they can want it, but they brought Ronnie Hickman out. I think that's a really interesting thing that they decided Ronnie Hickman was someone they wanted to let the media talk to. So it seems to indicate that they have some plan for him, but the safety room is really interesting. I've said it before. The reality is Jim Schwartz doesn't really do free safety, strong safety. He does left, right. But right now, Juan Thornhill is really the only true free safety style you would trust him to kind of play center field. Everybody else, D'Anthony Bell, Rodney McLeod, Grant Delpit, and Ronnie Hickman are either that kind of tweener player that can do a little bit of both, or they're just strong safety. So I think Hickman is right. He does have to fight every day for that roster spot, because if anything happens to Thornhill or they feel like they need a little bit more coverage, I'm not really sure they have that guy to replace Thornhill or to step in at times to really be that primary coverage safety wherever they want that on the left or right hand side. So he's right. It's every day that rent is due.
So the Browns, this is from the Bleacher Report. Browns face more pressure than any team in the NFL this season, and their rationale: no other franchise is currently in a position where Cleveland sits. Browns didn't make the playoffs last year, yet expectations are sky high. If things don't go as planned, they have an owner with a hair trigger likely to blow up the current setup. And you can say whatever you want to say, Jared. They finally have the quarterback that they have identified as being the quarterback they wanted to go out and get, and they have him for a full year.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally the only thing they haven't tried right before this. They've drafted, they brought in the older guy, the Jeff Garcias of the world. They've tried the third round, I think, the Charlie Fries and the just a variety of Colt McCoys, and there's definitely a couple that I'm missing right now. They've tried it all. The 20-year-old quarterback who has been a stud, who shouldn't have been available. Obviously, we all know the reasons he was available. It is just different, but that's Brent Sobolewski is a good friend of mine who wrote that article for Bleacher Report. He's not wrong in that the Browns really do have a lot of that pressure. Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski. The reality, though, is I'm not sure the Browns have the ability to blow it up. And so while they have all that pressure, really that pressure is on the general manager and head coach, because in a lot of ways, a lot of these restructures and just how the contracts are, including Deshaun Watson's guaranteed deal, really difficult to blow this roster up. So it is a roster that has a year, 2 or 3. The rest of the staff may not have that year, 2 or 3. They may only have this year.
Along those lines, we're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hello, guys. After all this talk about Kevin Stefanski possibly on the hot seat or needs to prove himself or whatever, I just had this theoretical question. What if the Browns went 13-4 and still missed the playoffs? Does Stefanski stay or go? Take care, guys. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. I don't know that they could possibly go 13-4 and miss the playoffs. But to the caller's point, I think the reasons they missed the playoffs would factor into it. Jimmy Haslam as much as said so. They do have high expectations, though, and if you don't meet expectations, that owner's going to make changes.
It can. I think I've always talked to fans about, defining success cannot always be about wins and losses, right? And it can't always be about the playoffs because there's so many things that are outside of your control, right? The Derek Anderson, Romeo Cornell 10-6 season they made the playoffs. None of us thought that was a good roster. None of us thought they should have extended Anderson and that roster was going to take them someplace and that was a building block. Excited that they made the playoffs, but that was not a quality roster, even though they made the playoffs, right? And so in the same way, if the Browns don't make the playoffs this year, everyone agrees this is maybe the toughest conference, maybe in 2 decades, 3 decades ever, right? The AFC is really, really talented at the quarterback position. And so it's all about, are the Browns competitive? Are they winning games they should win? Are they winning some of those kind of 50-50 games? Are they showing development? They absolutely should have a winning record, but the Browns could, be 11-6 and miss the playoffs. And that is a successful season. They could also happen to be kind of that 9-8 and make the playoffs. And that doesn't mean it's a successful season. So it's not just about record. It's not just about playoffs. I know it's a results driven league, but there are so many variables on a field that just cannot be controlled that we have to be more nuanced in our conversation than just record and just playoffs.
Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. We'll take a look with a couple of players on what the Browns are doing schematically. Sports from CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Emmanuel Acho, former player, as well as Bucky Brooks. Take a look at how the Browns offense with some new wrinkles making things difficult on defenses. This from FS1 Speak.
So let's talk about why Deshaun Watson can take that next step this year with the Cleveland Browns. It won't just be to me, Bucky, because of Deshaun, but because of a player they acquired this offseason, Elijah Moore. Now, interestingly enough, Elijah Moore plays what position, Bucky, bro?
I mean, he plays wide receiver, but he can do anything. He looks like a hybrid.
He is a hybrid. He plays wide receiver like Bucky just told you, but he's here in the backfield. What does that do for defenses when Elijah Moore, wide receiver, if he's in the backfield and he jet motions, Bucky, instantly, what does it do to this defensive back?
When someone moves, things have to change. So right now, safety comes down. I got to expand wide because he's going to the width, going to the sideline.
Okay, so the safety has to expand wide, but me as a linebacker, Willie Gay, a veteran, if I see Elijah Moore out here, a wide receiver in the backfield, I'm thinking to myself, I got to keep eyes on him. I got to keep eyes on him. I got to keep eyes on him. If I'm keeping eyes on that wide receiver, now running back out here, I am vacating my zone. Willie Gay should be about 12 yards deep, Bucky. Yep. You know this, 2 yards outside the hash. Because he's not Deshaun Watson.
Oh, this is bang game because he's banging his head on the goalpost. This is a nice throw. It's on time. Donovan Peoples-Jones catches this right in the middle.
We'll show you from another angle, like Bucky just said. To some degree, you're going to see it right there outside the hash. Bang. Easy money. Now, that was interesting. That was on the second play of the game.
And, Jared, when you look at that, I am really anxious to see some – that's a vanilla look in a preseason game. They haven't got into the RPOs or any of the stuff that they're going to, I believe.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see what Elijah Moore can do to the offense. And then you add in Deshaun Watson's ability to scramble. He has been really confident in doing that, both in practice when allowed to, and then his little bit of time during the preseason games. I think the Browns have such a unique way of being able to attack. You know, you even take that look, and instead of having as many receivers, you have Nick Chubb in the backfield. And you have Elijah Moore doing that same motion, and you have a draw play where Willie Gay has moved out of his spot. The safety has already come down, and all of a sudden Nick Chubb is coming downhill with no one in front of him, basically, because both the linebacker and the safety have opened up space just because Elijah Moore went in that motion. In a lot of ways, I expect Moore is going to be the Browns' third running back. They won't use him a ton in that way, but after Ford and Chubb, I think it's going to be Elijah Moore taking a majority of the pre-motion snaps in the backfield, and it just creates a lot of problems when you can have Moore and Chubb and Amari Cooper, the ultimate wide receiver professional. It really opens up a lot of opportunities for Deshaun Watson to kind of pick teams apart, know where the ball is going before the snap because of all of those kind of things. Everything we did not see last year. And like you said, then you add the RPOs into it, and all of a sudden you have an offense where defenses are guessing. And when defenses are guessing, the offense is in control. And that's exactly what I expect to see quite often in 2023.
So this one from the Bleacher Report. Biggest takeaways from every NFL team's roster cuts. Browns. In Deshaun Watson's first full season at quarterback, the Browns expect to be Super Bowl contenders. As a result, team cut ties with Cade York. The Browns couldn't wait for York to develop. They want to win now. Therefore, the 22-year-old is no longer with the team. Jared, I think you can point to a number of moves, Cade York among them, where yeah, this team expects to win, and it's win now.
Absolutely. And I think it is win now. And I think it also is, we need to see progress. We need to see that you know what you're doing. And I think, unfortunately, I'm not going to pretend to be a kicker, an analyst. The ball goes in, the ball doesn't go in. But actually with Cade York, it was very clear. I had no idea what that ball was going to do. That ball could be going directly. It's kind of like my golf swing at times. The ball can be going directly between the goalpost and take a hard left, like it's trying to get off an exit or something. And it never seemed to make sense. The clip we showed earlier, Dustin Hopkins, that ball just kind of did what we've seen field goals do. And so they just had to make a move because there's just too much invested. They can't allow too many games, and especially important games, to be blown. Again, first week against Cincinnati, a tough team. You can't let a field goal, an extra point. They missed the first extra point, and all of a sudden they're chasing and they have to go for two. And all of a sudden, just everything becomes more difficult. They couldn't allow that. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know if Dustin Hopkins is going to be a good kicker, a great kicker, an okay kicker. A lot like middle relievers in baseball, they kind of come and go, and there's only a very few amount of Adam Vinatieri and Justin Tucker types.
Yeah, and again, you got to find somebody that's going to make the makeable kicks. Dustin Hopkins isn't great from beyond 50. That's all right. Be good from inside of 50, and things should work out. All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, this is Randall McKissack, lifelong Browns fan. So the season's about to start. So here's my question about offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski. So he's notorious for his scripted 15 plays. Will he allow Deshaun to audible and go with scramble around and go with the defense presents to us? So I'm interested, is he going to hold Deshaun Watson to going with the plays that he calls? Secondarily, Kevin Stefanski never likes to go really deep. He do a few chunk plays. He maybe go deep one time a game. Will he allow Deshaun Watson to air it out? That's my second question. Hopefully we'll get some big chunk plays. Then thirdly, Kevin Stefanski really relies on timing plays, down and out, run down and turn around. We never do anything like mixing it up, crossing patterns, confuse the coverage. I'm hoping that we have some more creative design plays. Love to hear you guys comment. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jared, I think he's going to have a lot of freedom at the line of scrimmage to get out of plays that he thinks don't work. I think Kevin Stefanski did not trust either of the quarterbacks that have played before, and that's why you saw what you saw.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality of kind of the wide zone scheme and the play action and the boots and all of that kind of stuff is it is set up to really raise the floor of the offense so that it's not going to make huge mistakes. Everything is kind of scripted out. Like he talked about timing routes, 1-2, the ball is out, or you're going to the next. It's very scripted and planned because you want to make sure that there aren't the mistakes to kind of bottom out the floor and just let things be wide open and let them kind of play point guard. When you have a talent like Deshaun Watson, you kind of open things up. You want the timing routes, you want everything to be in sync, but you also want to provide an opportunity. The Donovan Peoples-Jones kind of skinny post that they broke down earlier, Amanalacha, that's a great timing play that everything was in structure and boom, we got 15 yards. But you also want to have other things going on in the play when Deshaun Watson wants to go to a second or third read or wants to extend the play, that you can get those chunk plays. So I think you're going to see a little less timing, a few more of those crossing routes, a few more of those skinny posts, some of those kind of things that can really open up some of those bigger plays. And you're also going to see kind of those third and fourth receivers, instead of them being check down receivers, they're going to be the guys that are kind of creeping open on the back end to allow Deshaun Watson to kind of take advantage of a defense that might be worried about his running or whatever receivers are kind of in front of them.
Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature and I are going to step aside, take another timeout, other side of the break. What are some of the other national medias expecting from the Browns? That's straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Try C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dogs by Nature, Joy Taylor from FS1 Speak on if she expects the Browns to be among the AFC's best.
They better.
Why?
Why wouldn't they be?
230. 230.
0. And then the
guaranteed under
guaranteed.
there. Ooh-wee.
We talk a lot about people's money and expectations and Super Bowl or bust. It all starts right there in Cleveland. This is a team, mostly, that Baker Mayfield, who's on his third, fourth, I can't keep track, 14?
Yeah.
14? Lots of teams. Baker Mayfield took to the playoffs and won a playoff game there. So the expectations can't be win a playoff game. I don't want to hear nothing. Baker Mayfield did that for far less money and way more drama. So in the building. So yeah, you have to be Super Bowl or bust. They absolutely have to be amongst the elite. And when you look at the roster, there's really no excuses here. Last year was, okay, we all collectively agreed. It's almost impossible for you to come back from 2 years off of football, especially at that position, no matter how good the roster is, and come in and make noise. It's not reasonable. But when you look at the roster, when you look at what he's been paid, and look at what they're paying him for. We keep talking about the money. Why are they paying him that money? They're paying him that because they expect him to throw for almost 5,000 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. That's where it starts.
I don't often agree with Joy Taylor, but I almost did there until she started talking about the numbers, Jared. They don't need him to throw for 5,000 yards. They could care less. They have a running back. They have an offensive line. He needs to be able to make plays with the game on the line. That's it. If he does that, he's a good quarterback.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've agreed with Joy Taylor almost ever. And so that works out really well. And, the other thing I just want to say, I probably said it in different places. The whole guaranteed thing doesn't mean anything. I know everybody's made it an issue. Every quarterback gets their money or more, right? It's just the way it works. Like the fact that it's guaranteed doesn't really matter. Kyler Murray has not been good and is injured and probably going to miss most or all of this season. He's going to get that money. One way or another, he's going to get a vast majority, 75, 85, 90% of that money. And most likely, probably going to get more than 100% of that guaranteed because that contract is going to get reworked, even if he's not in Arizona. But the reality is that Deshaun Watson was brought in to win. And in the NFL today, you need someone who can win as a quarterback when it matters. You need someone who, and even with, Jim Schwartz's wide 9, if they can get a lead, then you can really kind of sick those guys on the quarterback because you're not worried about the running game. And so the Browns should be good. The whole idea of winning more than one playoff game. Baker Mayfield beat a Pittsburgh Steelers team that handed the Browns 21 points basically, and made that game so easy for him. So again, we're comparing apples and oranges, different time frame. That was COVID. That was that season that was really crazy. The reality is the Browns need to win a lot of games and look like a team that can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Like that's what it means. All of us will hopefully agree at the end of the season, even if they don't beat them, that the Cleveland Browns could compete and play with the Kansas City Chiefs. That is the goal. That is how we know that they'll be good. Whether Watson throws for 4,000 yards, 5,000 yards, runs for 600 yards, all of those things don't really matter. Does the team on the field look like they're in the same stratosphere as the Kansas City Chiefs, Cincinnati Bengals, and those like?
Is that what it takes for the Deshaun Watson acquisition then to be successful, do you think, so that they're among the elite?
Yeah, I think it does. I think obviously you want an AFC championship game at least. But I think there are just so many variables that, yes, you want that. But you even think about the Browns' second playoff game with Baker Mayfield. They could have won that game if Rashard Higgins, that play was called a penalty like it should have been, or if he just doesn't fumble the ball, right? And so there are so many variables. They could have been in the AFC championship game that year had that penalty not happened. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes getting hurt really helped that process. So I do think they need to look like they belong. They need to be a threat. And then everything else from there, we're really talking about kind of splitting hairs at that point in time. Are they a threat to the Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, Jets, maybe those kind of teams? Then that means they've done what it takes with Deshaun Watson, and hopefully they actually win some of those games as well.
So Denzel Ward still in the concussion protocol. How big of an injury concern is that for you?
For me, it's huge. That's his, from what I understand, 4th concussion. And so, the brain is such an important, we all know about CTE, and I'm not pretending to diagnose anything, but we all know if I roll my ankle, I'm more likely to roll my ankle. Well, your brain is kind of more important than that. And it's at some level more delicate than that. It could be as simple as there may not be as much brain fluid up there to kind of bounce around, and so maybe he's getting more concussions. Maybe it's how he tackles. Whatever it is, Denzel Ward is a really, really, really good cornerback that needs to stay healthy, and he's also really, really aggressive, and I'm not sure he has really changed how he tackles since he got into the league. Greg Williams, for all of his problems, made it very clear he needed to learn how to tackle better. So I have a lot of concerns about him personally, and what that looks like for him. And then for the Browns, that's your top cornerback. There are guaranteed dollars in that. When will he be able to play? All of those things are important. The fact that they didn't put him on IR tells us that he should be available in the first couple of weeks. But concussions are not like ankles. You have no idea what that recovery time is. And at times, Ward has taken a little while to recover. And you start to wonder, we have no idea. We're not medical in that way. But you start to wonder what it's going to look like for him in the long term.
All right, this from ESPN.com. Predicting one potential surprise for all 32 NFL teams. And they say for the Browns, don't be surprised if Myles Garrett wins Defensive Player of the Year. With Jim Schwartz installed as new coordinator, Zadarius Smith there to be a complement in the pass rush, Garrett could be in for a monster season. Jared, I wouldn't be surprised if he sets a sack record. I'm not saying he's going to, but I wouldn't be like, this style and what Jim Schwartz wants, it's right in his wheelhouse. And every time he talks about it, he can't help but smile.
It's crazy to look at, even if we don't even talk about Jim Schwartz, it was Myles Garrett and nothing, right? Taven Bryan was the second leading sacker last year. He got a 1 year, $4 million contract from Indianapolis, and I'm kind of sure that was an overpay. Jadeveon Clowney was a strong presence, but was not a pass rush presence. So you add Shelby Harris, you add Delvin Tomlinson, you add Zadarius Smith, Ogunaya, Okoronkwo, Siaki Ika. Like, there's just so much talent there that teams are either going to double up Myles Garrett and hope in the rest, or Myles Garrett is going to be in the Defensive Player of the Year category. And if the Browns are really good, we can really just talk about it, to be honest. If the Browns are really good, Deshaun Watson is not going to get that credit this year. He's not going to be in the MVP, conversation, all that. So it's going to have to go somewhere. And if it's going to go somewhere, it's going to go to Myles Garrett. Yeah,
and the other thing is Jim Schwartz will move him around. He will find a way to, you want to double team him? All right, we're going to slide him over here. And, he likes matchups, and he will find a matchup that he and Myles Garrett can exploit. Jared Mueller, Dawgs by Nature, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. Back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports for CLE, talking Browns. We'll be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I know Watson said that the offense is going to be fireworks, so I'm expecting that they're going to pass more. I really, really do hope that they implement a lot of the read options, zone options to the run game, just because I think it will, amplify the running attack even more than it already is. And they're going to be dangerous on the ground or through the air. So it's almost like pick your poison, almost like how the Ravens were at one point in time with the aerial attack and then the ground game. So I think that if we add more read option, zone option, whatever you want to call it, I think we'll be more formidable on the ground with the backs that we have right now.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jared, Kevin Stefanski has said he's going to do the things that Deshaun Watson does well. Read option is one of them. Another one is allowing him to get out of bad plays and recognize what defenses are doing. I would expect that. I would expect a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think every good has some bad, right? So I think the offensive line is going to take a little while to kind of adjust to some of that, even getting downfield a little early. RPOs are really interesting and fun. But they also require, because they're a run-pass option, the offensive line assumes run, and that means the quarterback has to get the ball out of his hands very, very quickly. And so if it's a run-pass option, it does, it leads to either a quick throw or all of a sudden the quarterback's back there with the ball and can't get rid of it. We've actually seen them run true college option plays. And so I think those are really fun and interesting. But there's a reason that doesn't get run much in the NFL, because a lot of times the quarterback is getting hit and it allows for more risk with the football. So I think it can be a lot of fun, but how a team is going to be successful, take the Chiefs, for example. They do a lot of interesting, creative things. They do 1 or 2 or 3 a game. They aren't doing that. Is, you cannot run a full RPO offense. You need to have it in there. It's nice, and that's something Deshaun Watson loves to do. Really gives him a lot of control. But you can't, have a steady diet of it. It just leads to too many concerns and too many problems. But it definitely is going to be a big part of the offense with a lot of these little wrinkles that they can put into it.
All right, this from NFL.com. NFL triplet rankings. So it's quarterback, running back, pass catcher. They go Bengals number 1, that's Burrow, Mixon, and Chase. Chiefs number 2, Mahomes, Pacheco, and Kelsey. Bills number 3, Allen, Cook, and Diggs. They have the Browns down at 19. Watson, Chubb, and Cooper. And this writer for NFL.com, I'm doubtful Watson will return to the elite form he showed during the 2020 season in Houston. Cooper was as inconsistent as any receiver last season, but he had better chemistry with Jacoby Brissett throwing him the ball than he did with Deshaun Watson. So they had the Browns 19. What he's not taking into account is we also know that Cooper had a core muscle injury because he had surgery on it in the offseason. And Nick Chubb, 19's way too low. I'll just come out and say it. I don't know. That's like a Wheel of Fortune ranking.
Yeah, I was looking up who the writer was. I don't know that writer, so I can't speak to him. It just feels like, again, and it's understandable. Listen, the Browns have given every fan and media a reason to expect the worst, right? But if Deshaun Watson, a good buddy of mine said the other day, if Deshaun Watson fails, it's because he put on a Browns jersey. That's it. It's just because he put on a Browns jersey and everything fails in Cleveland for no reason at all. Otherwise, Deshaun Watson is really good. Nick Chubb is the best running back in the NFL and is going to be more involved in the pass game. And I'm not sure what inconsistent means. 2 different quarterbacks, things are different. You're going to have inconsistency. The best wide receiver was going to show some inconsistency last year. He had more time with Jacoby Brissett. He got really comfortable. Brissett does things very precisely. Cooper does things very precisely. Watson, he's just got to learn some of the different ways that he does things. He's going to do that over time. I believe the triplets for the Browns should be top 10. And in the end, by the end of the season, as long as everybody's healthy, we're probably talking about a top 5 unit between the 3.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with you on that. All right, before I let you go, Joe Burrow back at practice. By all accounts, looks like he's going to play week 1. What do you think of that?
I just think it'll be interesting if he's a little rusty, if timing's a little off. Obviously he's played with these receivers, but he's been out, most of training camp. And so will timing be off? Will he just be will he be a little sore? does some of those, core muscles and some of the muscles you cannot work out just by being in the gym, will he have kind of power coming off his leg on some deep balls? There's just a lot of little things. I don't think it's going to be a big thing, unless obviously he gets re-injured. But I do think there'll be a lot of little timing issues that we could see a lot more running of the ball and maybe a lot more short passes just to get Burrow comfortable, especially in the first 2 quarters. And then how does he come out of halftime in that third quarter? Those are just little things that I'll be watching.
Yeah, my curious thing is they know what Jim Schwartz they're just going to say, okay, go get Joe Burrow. And I don't know if I'm a Bengals fan, if I want my franchise quarterback, trying to scramble around after what this defense is going to do, coming back from a Achilles or a calf rather.
Yeah, especially when you look at kind of the quickness of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. If you don't even talk about the defensive line, Juan Thornhill or Grant Delpit coming on a blitz. I would. Jamar Chase said he didn't want Joe Burrow coming back till week 5, and to be honest, if it was my team, that's exactly what I would say as well. They have Super Bowl pedigree. They've already done it. They know they're good. They do not need to risk this. And I'm not saying that because I want the Browns to win. I'm saying that that's what I would want if I was a Cincinnati Bengals fan. I would want him on the sideline for a few weeks, maybe not week 5, maybe 3, 4. I definitely would not want this Browns defense to be the first defense he sees.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, they already have trouble blocking Myles Garrett. Now you're going to add in a couple other guys like that. Okay. I'm
not a big fan of Orlando Brown either. So
right.
I think they're putting a lot on Orlando Brown. He's a good tackle. He's not this elite guy that you pay that kind of money to. So it'll be interesting.
Jared Mueller, Dawgs by Nature, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jared.
Absolutely good, brother, to see you always.
Appreciate it. Jared Mueller, always really good stuff. Check him out, Dawgs by Nature. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Jackson McCurry from the Dawgland podcast joins us. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, what's up, guys? So I haven't called in a while. The last time I called, I do remember telling you guys after the draft that DTR was going to be the best draft pick they picked, and so far, so good. The other thing I wanted to say, I'm so glad they kept the receiver, that they put their receiver back, Austin. That guy's going to be a star. And I hope the Browns are finally getting together and not letting good talent go. So that's all. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jackson McCurry, the Dawgland podcast. Jackson, those are two young guys that are developmental. I mean, that's what you need. You know, that neither one is likely to impact the 53-man roster, at least, you know, the first half of this season. But you like what you see so far.
Yeah, I mean, DTR blew all my expectations away, the way he was able to be so comfortable and precise in that offense throughout the preseason. And then Austin Watkins, I mean, this was a guy that was tearing up the XFL. The Browns gave him a chance, and, you know, he took every chance they gave to him throughout training camp in the preseason. Unfortunately, his lack of special teams experience and skill is probably why he did not make the right 53-man roster at the end of the day. But now he's on the practice squad. Does he stay there all season? Only time will tell. We know how frequently injuries happen in the NFL, but these could be two guys that are in the Browns pipeline and maybe be solid depth pieces going forward, or they just could be another flash in the pan, as we've experienced time in and time out throughout the preseason in Browns history.
So the Browns traded a 7th-round pick to acquire Dustin Hopkins, veteran. Doesn't have big leg, over 50 yards. He's hitting 50% in his career. It's like 15 to 30. Really good inside of 50 and really good game-winning kicks. Hopkins talked about his approach kicking in close games.
Anytime when you're playing games that you're kicking field goals and you're down 20 or something, it's like it's almost harder to focus because you feel like might not make a difference. But you know, when you're kicking in meaningful moments, it forces you to, you know, I think oftentimes pressure almost helps focus in a number of different fields. But with kicking, I just feel like, you know, you have to lock in, and so, and I want to win. I like winning. I don't like losing. So anytime I can be on a team with high hopes, high expectations, and with the ability to do it, I would like to be on those teams. So I'm glad to be here.
And again, like what you hear from the kicker, we liked what we heard from Cade York, but an interesting perspective on kicking with the game on the line.
Oh, definitely. You have to be mentally focused in to make those kicks in those situations. I mean, we've seen all the great ones do it. Justin Tucker, Adam Vinatieri. Hopkins has been successful. He's been on a successful team the last few years with the Chargers, although I think they haven't lived up fully to expectations. And now he's coming to another team with big expectations. And, you know, he's right. You have to be mentally focused to make those kicks. I mean, we saw Cade do it week 1 last year, and then it just seemed to unravel after that point. So, yeah, hopefully Hopkins comes in and makes kicks for us in those crucial situations when needed. I did look up. He has kicked in Cleveland Brown Stadium before, missed an extra point when he was with the Commanders back in 2020. So he understands how difficult it is to kick in that stadium. So you just hope that he takes all the time he has leading up to week 1 to get adjusted to the stadium, the way the wind swirls, and hopefully we win a lot of games by a lot of points to where he doesn't have to make those crucial kicks, but I'm pretty confident he can do just that.
All right, so Ronnie Hickman, one of 2 rookie undrafted free agents who made the squad. He talked about making the roster and kind of waiting through the day to hear the official word about it.
A lot of emotions. Still remember the day of draft day of not getting that call. So just kind of using those emotions to drive me and help me get to the point to where I'm at now.
Ronnie, I know you said like last week or 2 weeks ago that you weren't like focused on the end result. You were just trying to go about the process. Like, how is that? How do you compartmentalize that looking back from now?
I think it worked for the better. You know, ending up where I'm at right now. It was a lot of outside noise, a lot of people telling you this or you seeing stuff online, but I chose to not focus on those things, and I thank my family, you know, for kind of letting me just hone in on the football aspect of things and, you know, keeping the main thing the main thing.
When did you find out that you made it?
I want to say around like 10:30 in the morning yesterday. I was laying in bed. I knew the call was coming at some point. It kind of felt like draft day all over again. I was joking with my family. But I knew it was coming at some point in the morning, and luckily it was at 10:30.
Was that a nervous couple of days?
Anxious to say the least, just because you know you're going to get a call, but you're not sure what the answer going to be. But, you know, I felt like I did what I could, and it was no longer, you know, my decision at that time, so it was, you know, out of my control.
And Jackson, this guy, around the ball, and it doesn't matter if you're playing against the twos, the threes, the ones. Being around the ball it's a skill, and he has it.
Yeah, it's pretty astonishing that he matched his interception total at Ohio State in the preseason alone, but he had a knack being around the ball all throughout preseason. You knew the Browns were high on him with as much money they invested in him as a UDFA, but yeah, I think they like what they see out of him. He's still only 21 years old, so there's still room to grow. He's going to learn behind some solid vets in Rodney McLeod and Grant Delpit and Dwan Thornhill. So, I mean, you hope that, he makes his contributions on special teams this year, and then we'll see what happens with Grant Delpit. Obviously, if he has a great year, he's probably going to get paid elsewhere in free agency next year, but he's learning behind some good, solid vets that I think are only going to continue to make Ronnie Hickman a better player. So you hope he's one of these diamonds in the rough that other teams have found over the years as UDFAs, and hopefully the Browns can keep developing him and making them one of their homegrown guys for the foreseeable future.
All right, before we go to break, this from Dog Pound Daily. 3 most questionable players making the Browns' 53-man roster. Number 3, they go with James Hudson, the offensive tackle. Number 2, Harrison Bryant, tight end. And number 1, Jordan Elliott, defensive tackle. I don't really have an issue with any of those 3 being kept on the 53. Bryant was banged up, really didn't practice a lot. He had an illness. Jordan Elliott, I'm not as down. I don't want him as my starting tackle, but I see some things that he does well that make him an interesting rotational piece in certain situations, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I wasn't high on what I saw out of Jordan Elliott during the preseason, but the Browns guaranteed him $1.5 million when they reworked his contract, and Jim Schwartz had nothing but praise for him in minicamp. So you have to think that he sees something in mind. He was a starter last year. He played a lot more snaps. I don't see him playing as that many snaps. So if the Browns can find a solid role for him to what he excels at, maybe he can be a nice rotational piece this year. But if you need him to play more snaps and a higher percentage of snaps, it's probably not a good thing. But at the same time, Jim Schwartz has developed defensive linemen. He clearly saw something in Elliott during the spring. So we'll see what they have in mind for him in terms of a role in the 2023 season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be a lot of snaps. He does get some penetration interior so that, keep that in mind. Could be obvious pass rush situations. Jackson McCurry from the Dawgland podcast and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, former wide receiver talking about what he sees from the Browns offense this year. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jackson McCurry from the Dawgland podcast. James Jones, former wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, played with Brett Favre, on what he sees from this Browns offense and what he thinks they'll be able to do this year.
Number one, if the coach is giving him that, I mean, it's title contentions.
What you mean by that, giving him that?
What I mean by that is how easy he's making it on Deshaun Watson, right? We did a little bit of that with Randall Cobb, and we had a great one in Aaron Rodgers back, and it just made it so much easier on Aaron Rodgers. You put a receiver in the backfield. That means you're not going to have a corner in the box, because if you put a corner in the box, you know what they're going to do with a guy like Elijah Moore? They're going to hand it off to him like we did Randall Cobb, because we got the numbers, and we're going to get big boys on little bodies, right? So if you leave a linebacker or bring a safety down in the box, he cannot stick with Elijah Moore. Don't forget, Elijah Moore is a receiver. So he's not going to be able to guard him when it comes to running routes. And that's why you see the defense confused, really easy on Deshaun Watson to get the ball out of his hands. And we know what he can do with his legs.
Again, James Jones, wide receiver, what he sees from this offense. When you hear that, Jackson, makes a lot of sense. It kind of points to the scheme that Kevin Stefanski is working with Deshaun Watson and the weapons.
Definitely. We've talked about it all offseason, the number of weapons on this offense, the variety of things they can do with guys like Elijah Moore, with Marquise Goodwin. And then you mentioned the guys that have been here, Cooper, Njoku, Peoples-Jones, of course, Nick Chubb. I mean, the array of talent surrounding Deshaun Watson and the things that they can do, what Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt can scheme up against opposing defenses, you would think this is the formula for success. We saw that in glimpses during the preseason against Washington and against Kansas City. Deshaun's got the talent. You know, there's still some things that need cleaned up, but luckily we had 2 weeks to prepare for Cincinnati. And then I agree with Deshaun. I expect some fireworks in that opener for sure.
So Glenn Cook, Assistant General Manager, VP of Player Personnel, talked about getting Austin Watkins back on the practice squad.
It's tough. I mean, you guys saw, like, you know, we worked him out maybe 2.5 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks, and it was a really good workout. But you never know how guys are going to play in the preseason. So, and I told him myself, I was like, man, to see you know, take hold to the opportunity, it goes back to like whether you're a CFA or a draft pick. Once you step between the white lines, it's all about who can make plays and who can produce. So he did everything you could ask him to do, right? Like, it just doesn't always work out. I think we're glad we got him back. You know, there's probably a chance for him to go some other places, but we're going to keep working with him. You never know. Like, you guys have seen it. You get to week 10, and a guy like him may have to step on the field, and I think, you know, we'll see. We could be comfortable with that.
And again, we had talked about him a little bit earlier. I absolutely think they'd be comfortable if they had to put him in.
Yeah, I mean, when he got his chances in training camp, when Watson threw him the ball, he made plays. And in the preseason, when DTR threw him the ball, when Kellen Mond threw him the ball, he caught it, he made plays. I mean, you don't expect him to go out there and become the next Randy Moss or anything, but he's a guy that can catch the ball. Maybe he could be like a David Bell where it's a 3rd and 5 situation. You need him to get 5, he might get you 6 or 7. I mean, he's worked his butt off to get back into the NFL, you know, was humble enough to go down to the XFL and proved to everyone he can do it there, and now he's getting his chance in the NFL. So, I mean, if he keeps working with the guys around him in that wide receiver room, if he can feed off that and better his game, who knows what's going to happen with him as the season progresses. Yeah,
and we had talked about it a little bit earlier. What Glenn Cook said alluded to the fact, you know, special teams kind of the deciding factor between the 53-man roster and the practice squad, but they feel like he's a guy that can play.
Yeah, definitely. I think we all saw that in the preseason. I mean, this is his opportunity now. If he can be part of kickoff coverage during practice, obviously being part of the practice squad, it's like the scout team, so he's going to get reps maybe there. If he can work on his game in special teams, maybe he can be one of these extra call-ups that they have. They get 2 call-ups per week on the practice squad. So maybe if Watkins works his butt off on the special teams portion of practices, maybe he'll get that opportunity. And who knows, maybe Stefanski will sneak him out there for a snap or two to mess with an opposing defense that they weren't prepared for number 80. Maybe he goes out there and makes a play that surprises everybody.
Jackson McCurry from the Dawgland podcast, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jackson.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Have a good one.
All right, Jackson McCurry, make sure you check him out, the Dawgland podcast. Before we go, the Guardians making some news. So the Los Angeles Angels placed 5 guys on waivers, 3 of them pitchers that they acquired at the trade deadline. The Guardians have claimed right-handed starter Lucas Giolito was an all-star a few years back for the White Sox. Left-handed reliever Matt Moore and right-handed reliever Ronaldo Lopez, who has been pitching very well. Now, another one of the Angels that was placed on waivers, Hunter Renfroe, claimed by the Reds. That's part of that tweet. But the Guardians get the 3 pitchers, Giolito, Lopez, Matt Moore. To create room on the roster, they designate Peyton Battenfield and Eric Haas for assignment. So Guardians trying to bolster that pitching staff. These guys would be eligible for the playoffs because they were acquired before the September 1st trade or deadline to make them available for playoffs. Guardians go into play tomorrow. 5 games behind the Twins. They do have another series with the Twins, so making that last-ditch attempt to improve their pitching staff again. They claim Lucas Giolito, Ronaldo Lopez, Matt Moore on waivers from the Los Angeles Angels. They're expected to be in uniform this weekend in Tampa Bay. Or in Cleveland against Tampa Bay. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.